welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the program, and it is show number 153. Happy to be with you. Happy to be live here on Facebook. Happy and proud to be a member of the Education Podcast Network, Voice Ed Radio, or wherever you are listening. So excited about today's program and just feel blessed and fortunate to be with you. It's show number 153. Let's get rolling. We are going to meet Coach Blaine Taylor. Coach is a lifelong men's Division I basketball coach. He has had tremendous success. He's been at a number of different places, literally from coast to coast. We're going to ask him about his life on the different coasts, as well as an amazing time at University of Montana where he played and then kind of grew into the coaching role. So I love talking to coaches, right? When I was refereeing on the sideline, it was a different aspect. It was a different time. But really, they offer a lot of leadership, a lot of guidance for young men or women, whoever they're coaching. So really a different perspective. So I'm looking forward to talking to Blaine here in just a moment. If you are watching live, certainly jump in and leave us a question or comment. Blaine is certainly a personality and has got a lot to say. So we're going to get to him. But he recently retired from the game of basketball. And, I'm in the middle of my education career and wherever you are in your journey of leadership or career in your job, right? It's great to talk to people who are just starting out, learning about their challenges. It's great to start to talk to people who are in the middle because they're kind of going through the thick of it, right? And then when people near the end of their careers or just stepped out, Blaine just stepped away from coaching, they can offer some great perspective. And I hope I know Blaine will do that today. But some of the things I think about, right? My health, my wellness, my overall wellness, the security, right? The financial security to be able to retire and be comfortable in that. And certainly the freedom to be able to do some different things that we want to do. And again, I know Blaine is going to talk a little bit about that, but I think he can check all those boxes as well as look back at a career that there was a lot of success, much more success than not. And that's a tribute to him and his leadership. So wherever you are in your journey, you always kind of think like, well, where do I want to be? How do I want to get there? When I'm at such and such a stage, what are the things that I want? And looking at where Blaine landed, certainly he's done a number of things right. Let's bring him into the program here. And again, if you're watching live, certainly jump in with us. Coach, welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond.
I'm really happy to be with you, and you can't give me a technical, Andrew.
Well, we'll have to figure that. I haven't given any out on the show.
Man, no, I'm really happy to be with you. I think what you're doing here is got a lot of substance, and it's really timed well for all the things we're facing here in the United States and around the world.
Absolutely, and I feel really fortunate that we were able to connect, Blaine. You've done so much in the game and really are a tremendous leader. But let's start with, how are you doing? We're in a time of COVID. You just recently stepped away from the game. And how are you?
I'm doing great. I've retired twice. I might do it a third time. But right now with this pandemic going on, I just kind of, stepped out of the limelight. And it's a confusing time. And I was kind of at an age and, your health is your wealth, and I'm healthy, and I just wanted to kind of step away at this time and kind of have some fun with life. You talked about freedom. There's some freedom of spending time with family and reconnecting with people that are important to you while you're in this period that's just so tenuous.
Yeah. And was it the time of COVID, Coach? Was it the travel? Was it being in California? Or all of the above?
Well, the stars kind of aligned for me. I needed to get an ankle replaced, which I got in California before I moved to Las Vegas, where I'm kind of laying up right now and playing a little golf and jumping in and out of the pool. But uh, COVID hit, and it was just clear that I was going to, I finished my 4 years at UC Irvine, which was my last stop. And then just kind of take some time and take a breath. I admire the people that have had to grind it through this. It's like people have a COVID hangover. It's just been going on for a long time. And so all the people that are working remote or all the businesses that are out, there's just so much there. And for me, I feel really blessed to have the health I have and the ability to just step away and take a deep breath and say, hey, I'm not sure what I'm going to do as I go around the turn here, but right now I'm really enjoying life.
Yeah. And you had a heck of a run. You were a standout player in Montana, wound up starting your coaching career there, working your way up. You spent some time at Stanford. And then really where you and I got to know each other is when you came east at Old Dominion. Tell me about the steps along your career, Coach, some of the things you're most proud of, and really, kind of tell our audience a little bit about, Blaine Taylor.
Well, I had a fortune cookie when I was a kid from Ming's restaurant that said, life to you is a bold and daring adventure. And I carried that in my wallet all the way along. And there were many people that thought when I became the head coach at Montana that I would stay there forever, and being from there and from that region and whatnot. But, I spread my wings and ran out and saw the world. But as I grew up, I was a product of my parents lived through the Depression. My dad shipped out of Pearl Harbor, raised 7 kids. So the education always ran through our veins. There was a lot of people in my family that have gone into education. When I got done playing at Montana, had a nice career, I was going to go to law school. And I weighed that back and forth, but I went into education. I got a master's in athletic administration. I always thought I would become an athletic director and a high school principal. I did not intend on being a college basketball coach at that time. I thought it might be a possibility. Like many of us, I was blessed to be around Mike Montgomery and Stu Morrill and Judd Heathcote, those kinds of people. And I got really fortunate that being around them led me to be an assistant and then the head coach at Montana. At the age of 40, I was called down to Stanford, and I was there in some wonderful years with Mike Montgomery. Then I, woke up one day and I was in California, and the sun went down in the ocean. And then the next day I was in Virginia Beach in Virginia, and the sun came out of the ocean. And I got to see this basketball world from a whole different perspective. And I had a wonderful run at Old Dominion and raised 4 daughters to adulthood out there, and then was pushed out after having had 13, 14 years, which is longer than anybody could imagine, to be blessed to coach any one place, and then went to UC Irvine. So I've just had I had somebody says you should write a book. In the meantime, I worked for NBC TV and Comcast and did television for 3 or 4 years. They says, you sure have an interesting story. To me, it's just one that I just keep adding chapters to, but I've been really blessed to be able to experience things on different levels, coast to coast, in every time zone, and kind of have a chance to kind of soak up this whole Americana experience from a lot of different vantage points.
Yeah. It really, again, center, West Coast, East Coast, you're right. That's a great analogy about the sun. Coach, at Montana, again, you were an excellent player. You grew into your coaching, but you won the most inspirational player award, which seems, that in Montana, that specific award is a big deal. Tell me about that and the attributes that you displayed to help you win that.
Well, one thing about Montana, it's a very resilient place. You're chasing by grizzly bears, and there's forest fires, and there's winter, and you got to grow up kind of tough. I was actually born in a town called Butte, Montana, and I actually coached Evel Knievel's grandson, believe it or not. But so it kind of ingrains in you that you got to go for it. And I was really blessed to be in a family that had a lot of stick-to-itiveness. They would, they're a really resilient bunch. So you kind of had to live up. I'm the youngest boy of, in a family of 7. And so you kind of had to live up to what your other people did. So the inspirational part of it I was actually chosen my senior year the student athlete of the year at the whole university in all sports. So I was a good student as well.
Wow.
And so, the inspirational part of it just was a good teammate. I thought I was coachable. If you talk to the guys that were my coaches, I understood the game. That really helped me in the college realm. So received a lot of awards along the way. And most of the time it was like you look back and said, well, we did this and I did that, and somebody had to be recognized. And many times I was one of the people that got lucky to do that.
Yeah. And Coach, again, being out west, Montana, and then to Stanford, how did you come so far and land in Old Dominion, Virginia Beach? What was it that made you?
This was interesting to me. When I got to Old Dominion, everybody wanted to ask me about Stanford, which kind of has the good seal of approval. And we were ranked number 1 in the country, won the Pac-10 all 3 years. It was 10 then.
Wow.
That I was there. We were really good. But I learned more at Montana. And a lot, if you look at the series of coaches from Montana, from Judd Heathcote to Mike Montgomery to Stu Morrill to Larry Kristoviak to Wayne Tinkle, who's at Oregon State, all these guys, we were all kind of in a brotherhood that we always said that Montana was like New York. If you could make it there, you can make it anywhere. And I learned a lot in both places. And when I went to Old Dominion, I kind of joked that I had my doctorate in coaching. If you combined Montana with Stanford, all of a sudden I went out there and I needed it. Because at the time I went into the CAA, when I first met you, the CAA, the Colonial Athletic Association, was cooking. VCU and George Mason during those years went to the Final Four. We qualified for the NCAAs 4 different times, but we were getting at-large berths, the competition, the TV package. We could beat anybody, any place. I mean, for instance, during those years, we beat Georgetown at Georgetown twice on their home court, and they went to the Final Four. We beat them by 18 on their court. And one of the officials ran up to me, who's done 1 million Final Fours. He comes up and says, "You're not even surprised at this." I said, "We're better than they are." And we were. And that's how good the league was during those years. And so during that time frame, I outlasted about 4 or 5 different coaches at each school. But Larinaga was at George Mason, and VCU had, Anthony Grant, who's at Dayton, and now Shaka, who's down. And I became friends with all those guys. Those were some ugly rivalries. But, I was real friends with the coaches, and the players had a good respect for one another also.
And you kept that smile on your face, and you were always a gentleman with the officials, even in the most intense moments. But Coach, you're very humble, but you had tremendous success there. What would you say are some of the keys to your success at Old Dominion?
I tried to keep it kind of keep it simple, stupid. I told the kids, show up and try hard is really the only rule I have. But show up, try hard, that means you're on time, you're ready, you're cleaned up, you've done your homework, and you give it all you got. You don't, cut things short. So show up and try hard. One of the other things is I thought we really needed to connect to the community. And so I says, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And so on campus and in the community, there was a connection. This is a little known fact. When I got there, the program needed a makeover of its culture. And I had Larry Kristoviak as an assistant. I had another guy by the name of Kenny Gaddison, 2 NBA guys, and Jim Corrigan. I had a really good staff. And Travis DeCure, who's the head coach at Montana, was another guy that helped us. But I told him in the first 2 years, I says, if you see a family with both parents, let's take a second look at the kid. And these guys said, what are you talking about? And I says, I want kids who have been told no by a unified front with no angles. So when I can come in and say, we're going to get you better, but you're going to have to answer to the bell, where you're going to have to be told no. You're going to have to live through the tough times to get to the good times. So 8 of the first 9 kids we signed at Old Dominion had both parents. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way, because there's a lot of good kids that I've coached over the years that weren't fortunate enough, but that gave us a stronger foundation to build on. And I needed to turn things to where that foundation was there so the thing could mushroom up. And it did. In our 3rd year, we got really good. And in our 4th year, we won 27 games and went to the NCAAs.
Yeah. And that goal of winning a conference championship and going to the NCAAs. I mean, you beat Notre Dame in the tournament. What did that mean for you? Right, you had been at it a while. You were a seasoned veteran. Those were some big time feathers, like we had talked off air. I mean, you went nose to nose with Butler, that wound up going nose to nose with Duke in the championship game. What did that mean for you?
Well, you're growing old when your regrets replace your dreams. And I always had dreams and didn't have a lot of regrets. But I do look back now at how good a team's, having been to the NCAAs 11 times with 4 different schools, what could have been. You play Butler to the buzzer. They tip it in with 0.2 seconds to go. And you grow up watching all these magic moments on television. I had to watch that tip-in play about 7,000 times up to the championship game that Butler played in, and you're sitting there going, maybe that could have been us. And I had to watch that highlight breaking my heart instead of. And so that's the old wide world of sports. The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And that's what sports gives you. It'll break your heart, as Judd Heathcote used to say. It'll make a ASS at all of us at some point, but it's what makes America. You go around the world and they are envious of how sports is instilled in our society. You watched the NFL playoffs last weekend, and it just makes you miss what we've had with this pandemic.
Yeah, so much of that energy and enthusiasm. You're right, Coach. You're in great shape now. Your health. You've done some changes in your life. But near the end of your time at Old Dominion, alcohol became a negative part of your life, which you had to make some changes on. Can you talk a little bit about that time and how alcohol negatively impacts you?
Yeah, you bet. At the time, as I look back at it, kind of joked that I had one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. It was not a good scene. And there's a thing called the YETS. You're eligible to. And so you're eligible for all the good things that can happen in your life, but you are eligible for all the things that can hiccup your life. And I was surrounded by a lot of death, which I've always had a hard time putting in its place. I was going through a divorce after 30 plus years, and I just fell into drinking. And there comes a point where you cross over to where you don't control the alcohol, and the alcohol controls you. And it became a problem. And, I've been the winningest coach in the history of the school, and I was fired. And I thank the guys that fired me in the later years, because it gave me a chance to step away and get my life in order. And my health is really good. It's been, 8 years, coming up. But there are a lot of people who have issues of one sort or another. It doesn't have to be alcohol, that just kind of keep it hidden, don't want it to come to the surface. When you find that subject and you become more transparent with it, there's a certain amount of privacy that everybody deserves. You'd be surprised how many people have had that challenge or others that have derailed them. And it's not about getting derailed, it's about getting back on the track. And that resilience, there's more chapters in your book.
Yeah. And you wrote some successfully, doing some TV, and then again getting back to UC Irvine, getting back to the NCAAs. Coach, what would you offer maybe for people that might be struggling with alcohol now? Some of the tips that work for you, because this time of COVID has, caused a lot of stress on people, and I know people have turned to alcohol maybe a little bit more than they should have.
Well, one of the discouraging things is some of the people that are the most judgmental about alcohol are the people that are on the verge of having problems. And so it's the one disease. You can have a lot of disease where you can go to a doctor and you can get some help. They might, do surgery. They might give you pills, but whatever the deal is. But it's the one disease that tells you don't have it. And it plays on your mind. It really is a disease. Once you get the physical part of it, it's a disease of the mind. It's a change in awareness and perception that you need to face up to it. And there's a lot of help out there, a lot of different angles. But at some point, the first step of anything is acknowledging that you have the problem, and then the rest is it's uphill but it really downhill once you come to grips with it. But it's one of the hardest things for people to do, is to look in the mirror and say, yes, I have a problem.
Well, you're an inspiration to a lot of people, Coach. The fact that you did land on your feet, you did make those changes, and it's inspiring to see, and we're really thrilled. I mean, we were joking. You could be a bodybuilder. You could be a model now.
I Taylor.
Yeah. Well, my mom is watching here. She always enjoyed you on the sideline, and she likes the refs first, but she was always a fan of yours.
But let me tell you a quick little deal about referees. As I got older, I learned that, I had my moments where I was hard to handle. And the way to get respect is to give respect. I'd always give a guy a bad call. And as active as I was in coaching, I always tried to, I liked officials that worked hard and had a sense of humor. You could talk to them. Mm-hmm. You could communicate. So I would always give a guy a bad call, and I'd always see him peek over going, oh, here he comes. And I wouldn't come after him. And later on in the game, when that 50-50 call came, I thought there was no clouded judgment on whether they were going to make a call. And I thought that helped me in my career, that I'd give a guy a pass, because it's not an easy job. Yeah. And, you look at the world we live in now. I was going to comment on this. One of the secrets to my success over time was to be apolitical. We live in a time when people are afraid to talk about what they need to talk about because of the cancel culture. And in certain positions in coaching, sometimes in administration, you have to be careful where you go with your opinion, because, they'll get you. And there's plenty of people that can get down on you. And so I was told one time, I'll share this with you. Should I open my mouth? Should I be apolitical? Should I stay silent? Should I speak up? And I had to learn as I went along that, does it need to be said? 1, 2, does it need to be said by me? And 3, does it need to be said right now? Because sometimes I used to get to the podium, and sometimes I'd pick a guy out that had a little too much to say, and I'd say, the thing I like about Joe is he approaches most subjects with an open mouth. But I had to make sure that I wasn't talking about me when I said that. I did have to be careful to stay. There were so many ways that people could get down on you in the coaching or in education or in any place where you're in the crosshairs of public opinion. And so I did stay out of the politics on campus or in our department or at large. And I was supportive, and I had my beliefs, but I kind of told the kids on our teams, when you come in here, you're going to have to check your race, your religion, and your politics and stuff at the door if we're going to be what we want to be. And then we'll embrace your individuality outside here.
Yeah. Great advice, Coach. And certainly you're always fair. You never just continue to stay on the refs. I remember that. You're always fair and getting that smile. But what else, Coach? What were some other points of leadership? That's knowing when to close your mouth, right? But what were some other key points for you in leadership?
I never asked anybody to do anything that I hadn't done or wouldn't do myself. Mm-hmm. And I tried to have an empathetic view of what people were like that worked for me or with me or around me. One of the things I'm really proud of is I was really blessed who I worked with is everybody that I worked with over the years is friends with me now. The Mike Montgomerys and the Stu Morrells and the assistants I've had, everybody is friends. And that is hard to say in this day and age. And there are people in the workplace that, I know somebody who doesn't have anybody that's ever worked for them or with them that'll even say hi to them.
Wow.
And that is a bad trait to have in the workplace. And I felt like one of the secrets to the success I had in people that I was around, and even the players, is not extending yourself and caring about more than just yourself. And that meeting people with a handshake and a smile and a caring attitude, I always told guys, you never know who's on your side until you know what hits the fan, until the chips are down. And then you really figure out who's on your side. And I had to go through some really tough situations over the years, some of them life and death, that people figured out that, he might be slow to give his word, but you can count on his word when he gives it.
Nice. Nice. Coach, you mentioned about people you work with, right? You have building relationships in this coaching fraternity. But we're approaching the second half of the school year, and there's a lot of jobs that open up and people go for jobs. What were some of the characteristics that you looked for in your assistants, right? I'm the principal here at my school, and I have my assistants. What were some characteristics you looked for in those assistants?
Well, loyalty first and foremost, because you can have as talented a person as you want, and if they're not loyal, then it's gonna. And it's hard in today's world to find people that don't have an agenda. And one of the things that was kind of goofy for me that I looked at is when I looked at resumes. If somebody had been 5 places in 5 years, I really wasn't interested because they were just going to use me to hopscotch. And so I looked for that. Obviously, you had to look for certain talents. One of the problems that you can have, when I went back east, I only hired one guy that I had even met before. So you've got to be willing to surround yourself with talent. Now, it's kind of an oxymoron to say, well, I got to have loyalty, I got to have familiarity, and yet you got to go search that talent out. So there's a little bit of luck and a little bit of a gut reaction in hiring. And I was very blessed over the years that I had a lot of really good assistants and a little bit of dumb luck in it. But I'm kind of a gut reaction guy. I'm not a read a resume guy. You got to look me in the eye and you got to tell me what you think, what you believe, what you can do. And so I think being from Montana where, your handshake is your word and some of that kind of stuff paid off for me being able to judge people, to be a little more discerning about what they had to offer. And the same thing with recruits. You have to really, whittle through, what they tell you and what they really mean.
Mm. And you're listening to them, Coach, right? You call that timeout. You got 4 seconds on the clock. You know in your head maybe what I want to run. You look at the game situation, and I would always see those coaches huddled together. But how did you know when you had to go with your gut versus maybe your top assistant wanted to do something else? How did you make those decisions?
Okay, we're ahead at Notre Dame. There's very few. I don't want to say there was 11 seconds to go in the game, and we're ahead, I think, by 3. And so everybody wants you to foul, right? Well, I had one of the best defensive teams in the country. Now, you walk into the timeout, Mike calls a timeout in Notre Dame, and so they've got Luke Herringudi down there who hasn't scored until the last minute of the game. He's the player of the year in the Big East. Notre Dame was in the Big East then. So I come to the timeout, and I said, guys, we have not practiced fouling, but there's a lot of people that think. They all jumped right in my face and said, no, we're going to stop them. I says, I like that. Okay, we'll do that. So they had a voice. You empower them that they're going to make it work. Now, they shot a 3-pointer that ringed around about 6 times like it was going around a toilet bowl, and it came out, and Luke Herringudi grabbed it, put it back in, and we win by 1. So it all worked out. It makes a good story. But, I would go into huddles now and say, what do you think? Zone, man, whatever. And I would listen. I would listen to my point guards. I would listen to my assistants. But once we made a decision, there was no second guessing. Once we were in, we were in. We don't need a bunch of guys saying, hey, what ifs after that fact. A unified front, we're going forward, and we're going to live with it.
Coach, how about this? You coach some superstars. You coach some guys that went to the NBA. I grew up a Giants fan, right? Bill Parcells, and he talked about how Lawrence Taylor had different treatment. Phil Simms got treated a little different. And we live in a world now, right? Every kid gets a trophy. Everyone needs to be treated the same. But, let's say Bazemore, for example, right? Did Kent get any different special treatment than maybe the 13th kid on the bench, like that kind of stuff?
I don't know if it would be a little bit different today than maybe 5 to 10 years ago. But during the course of my career, I would take my best players behind closed doors. And I would say, if I can be harder on you than anybody on the team, I'll be fair. But there'll be moments where you're going to want to say, this is enough. If I can do that, you know how good a team we're going to have? If your best players can take strong treatment, everybody else will fall into line. And I was really blessed that they believed that, and they were tested at times with that. I was pretty demanding, but they in the recruiting process, you've got to ask them, do you want to be coached? Do you want to be developed? How good do you want to become? Kent Bazemore graduated from Old Dominion with 2 degrees after having redshirted, and there was some real speed bumps early in his career, and he ends up in the NBA and all that. So there's an example. And I was really hard on him at times early in his career. And now, did he transfer? No. Did he quit? No. But that I was very fortunate that my best players would measure up to that. Now, is there sometimes a little different decision making? Yes. Sometimes the leash is a little longer on some of the things they do on the court in terms of shot selection, maybe minutes, turnovers. I always told my best players, you look at the guys that lead the league in turnovers, they're the 5 best players in the league. So don't be worried about making a mistake. So you've got to kind of balance that part of it. I was very demanding academically. I thought if kids were behind in school, they were behind on the court. When I was at UC Irvine, I was an assistant, and I was in charge of academics, and one of the people in charge. We won our conference tournament the week 10 of school and had all of our schoolwork done before we went to the tournament. The following week, we beat Kansas State in the first round of the NCAAs. We had all of our finals taken before we left for the tournament. Over the years, I had learned you don't want to come back to school. You don't want it hanging over your head. And we had a 3.0 GPA, which is in the UC system. That is not easy to come up with. Wow. So I really think that team is 31 wins in the Big West, winning in the NCAA tournament. But a lot of that was the backdrop of the foundation that Russ Turner and our staff had put together with that group. I can't spread enough credit around, but I do think that when you've got kids that are behind in the school in classroom, you're going to expect inconsistency on the court. And the C students rule the world. I don't expect them all to be on the honor roll. I don't expect any teachers to be calling saying, "Hey, where is that guy and where's his work?"
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. Coach, you were fantastic. We're going to go to our last media timeout here. I got rapid fire. But before we did that, Coach, again, so many nuggets of knowledge here and a lifetime of leadership and influence on young people. Is there anything else you wanted to share that maybe I didn't ask you or that could help educators and or students that might be watching?
Well, you've covered a lot of ground. I really admire what you're doing with your show 153 and beyond. But, find a passion. I think that the thing that bothers me the most is people who are caught up in being victims. It can't happen for me. You got to find something that interests you. And you've got to listen. You got to open up your head and your heart to other people so you can find that passion. And I just, there's no hill for a climber. And I think you can do things that sometimes you don't even let, yourself allow yourself to dream about. And I think finding a passion is something that too many kids are, sitting there worried about their charger and their game rather than what's my passion. It can't, it can't be Fortnite. It's going to have to be something more.
Well said, Coach. This was great. Let's hit rapid fire because I know you have some big time appointments here that they're waiting on the other side of that window.
Yeah. When that sun is shining in Arizona, you got to be careful now.
All right, Coach, here we go. Last book you read.
Time for Mercy. It's if you remember the movie A Time to Kill, it's John Grisham. I'm just in the middle of finishing it up. It brings Jake Brigance back, Matthew McConaughey.
I love Grisham. Last movie you saw?
News of the World, Tom Hanks.
Favorite place to travel? And you've been a lot of places.
I love Rome. Rome has a certain just everything. You can eat your way through it. You can go through history. There's the religious plaque. It's just beautiful. I love going to Italy.
Did you ever take the team over there?
Yes. We flew in. We were to Lake Como, and we were on the bullet train. We went over to Greece. I took two of my daughters with me when I went. So it was 85 people or something like that.
Wow. Beautiful. East Coast, West Coast. What are some of the major differences that you know, having spent so much time on each one?
I got to the East Coast and they caught me off guard when they said, "You're finally on the right coast, right side of the country." The time zone difference. Being a sports fan, it's just the time zone, calling people, doing business, watching sports. The time zone difference. You know, everybody talks about the West being underexposed. The time zone difference. I mean, I never saw the end of Monday Night Football for a long time when I moved east.
Even you and I lining up the show today, we had to make sure we had the right time.
Yeah. I was sitting here an hour early because I went from Nevada down to Arizona yesterday.
You mentioned about the referees. You know, the best referees were fill in the blank.
The guys who were committed to their profession for the right reasons. I mean, they respected the game, they worked it, they stayed in shape, they were in position, and they communicated. I think communication, with the advent of technology, we've lost the ability to communicate face to face like you and I are right now. People hide behind their phones and their texts and their emails, and the best officials that I dealt with, we could have a laugh, we could be serious. I understood them, they understood me because we could communicate.
Yeah. And what was a pet peeve? Obviously, the flip side of that is something you don't like. But what was a pet peeve that maybe they might do that really got under your butt?
Get mad at me. You know, sometimes you're not a good decision maker, and I could get under your skin. And one of my pet peeves is guys who are a little too sensitive. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I tried to not take myself too serious. And I thought sometimes, so one of my was like, oh no, this guy's got thin skin. And it's, you know, you have to be careful when sometimes your humor can be one of the things I think is your biggest strengths is also your biggest weakness. And sometimes my humor would hurt somebody's feelings, and I'd have somebody that I'd embarrass, and then it would hurt me. And I had to back off sometimes and understand with more empathy what they were going through. And so, you know, one of the things that would bother me is sometimes you'd have a younger, sometimes you'd have an older, sometimes you'd have a guy that had worked the ACC the night before, and now he's at the Colonial, and they would not want to, you know, listen. And sometimes it was what I would call a little bit of thin skin. So, and the same thing with administrators or business owners or, you know, policemen. You know, if you got a little too thin a skin, it's hard to, you know, temper balance.
Well, I remember I had a game at the your arena there, beautiful spot, but the lights went out one time, and we played with the lights like halfway on, like we agreed, like, all right, we're going to play. And I said, good, coach, now you can yell at me because you can't see what I called anyway.
Well, I wasn't sure if it was you or one of the other two guys.
Even better. What's your best morning routine tip?
Nowadays, I get in one spot with one thought. I think far too many people jump out and start running at the day, and before they know it, their day's been ruined. So I try to start the day in one spot with one thought. You know, you can call it meditation, you can call it whatever your ritual is. But the other thing I remind myself of each day is that I can always start my day over. I don't have to have a bad day all day. Something goes wrong, I can always start my day over.
I love it, Coach. This is fantastic. What's the thing you miss most about college basketball?
Connection. I think that the reason I came back in after retiring the first time, even doing television was fun, but the connection to a group of people, to a staff, to a school, to a college campus, you know, a connection to something bigger than yourself is something that you really miss when you don't have it after you've been used to it for many years. And it gives you so much back, but you've got to give yourself to that environment, to having that connection.
Best purchase under $100 that has had a great impact on your life.
Hey, a coffee machine. I just bought one to take on this trip for $89. It's the new K Mini.
Okay. I like good coffee. I'm with you. Something about Blaine Taylor that people do not know about.
In high school, I played all the sports and I did all the stuff, but I sang. I had a sister that went to Utah State on a singing scholarship, and I was in a group. There was 5 boys and 5 girls, and wore tuxedos and dresses, and we toured the state of Montana singing. And people, see me and go, "No way, that wild man was actually singing." So I have a lot of respect for talents besides athletics.
I love it, Coach. You had a ton of great quotes here. I mean, I got pages full of your quotes. What, do you have a favorite that we can end on?
Oh, just don't take yourself too serious. I've always had a light moment, and it's not necessarily a quote, but I always think that people take themselves too serious. You've got to have a light moment to get through things at times, and my family has always had some gallows humor to get through things, and I think it's been a secret to our success is never to take ourselves too seriously and wear ourselves down with the grind.
Yeah. Coach, this was fantastic. I really appreciate the time, and I wish you continued health and success, whatever that next chapter is.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew. I sure appreciate it, and sure had a lot of fun.
Cool. Stay on the line a sec, Coach. Don't jump off yet. This was Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving, show number 153. Coach Blaine Taylor was always the man when I refereed his games, and even better today. Coach, we appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
All right, stay on the line. Let's try to get this music back on here. See what we can do here.